Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz guitarist Edward Decker. He talked about his new 2021 CD, The Best You Can Give, the Songs of Tony DeSare. He is a native of Bergen County, New Jersey, and his early influences were legends like Wes Montgomery, Bucky Pizzarelli, Nat King Cole, and the great Andre Previn. But his ultimate inspiration and mentor is Bucky Pizzarelli. He explains this and so much more.
All right. Well, hey, thanks for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz. I appreciate it.
Thank you for interviewing me.
You bet. So, your latest CD, The Best You Can Give. Talk to me a little bit about this coming out during a global pandemic. Not about when it was made or, that kind of a thing, but it's coming out now. What are your feelings with the very rare, there hasn't been a lot of interaction with fans for a while, so what does this mean for you?
Well, first of all, I've been with Tony since 2008, and I absolutely think he's the best in the business. I think that, I just have so much respect for him in everything, from his piano playing to his singing to his writing. And I think one thing that differentiates Tony from everybody else, his category, is his writing, is his compositions. Rather than try to record a record of, standards or something, I said, I want to play all your songs. He's got such a vast library, and he has a unique gift of writing songs that when you hear them for the first time, you think that it's an old song, and it's like, I never heard that song, and then you realize that he wrote it. They sound like he has the gift of being able to write beautiful melodies and harmonies that sound like they were written, 70 years ago or 80 years ago or 40 years ago, 50 years ago. But they're brand new, and they're beautiful. And so, I don't know if you're saying the pandemic. In the pandemic, everybody had more time to work on arrangements, and we were off the road. So I went down to his house, and he lives in Georgia, frequently to record. I record a lot in my house, and he gave a lot of input on what I was doing, and what he thought we should change. And then the ones I did with John Pizzarelli, Tony came up. We flew. We were performing. It was last March, I think, and we flew up to New Jersey, and we went to the studio, and so Tony was there for that, directing traffic on that as well.
Talk to me a little bit about how you got the jazz bug. How did this all happen for you growing up?
Well, I mentioned in Bucky's biography, I don't know how many there are. The one I saw, Life in Music, there's a whole page on me, and I got a grant. Well, what happened was I got really interested in 7-string guitar. I studied with Bucky at William Patterson. I told him, I want to study with you, but he was so generous. He was like, no, just come up. But I felt very bad about going up and not paying him. He wasn't asking me for any money. So instead of going up and not paying him, I applied for a grant with the National Endowment of the Arts to study the 7-string with him. And then I got the grant. So they sent him a big fat check. I don't even remember how much it was. At the time, it was a pretty substantial amount of money. And then, of course, I felt fine going up there, and I went up there every week for a while. I studied with Bucky, and we went through, he liked to go composer by composer. Jerome Kern would be first, and then Rodgers and Hart, and then Gershwin. So that's the way he liked to do it. But the funny story that's in the book is that part of that was he sold me at the time, my first 7-string, which I still own and I use on the road, is a prototype Gretsch that Bucky had. And in fact, if you look at all Bucky's photos early on, he was always pictured with a Gretsch. Well, I have that guitar. Well, when he gave it to me, when he sold it to me, I spent, I'm going to go in a little before the grant now. But when he first gave it to me, he sold it to me. And before I got the grant, I spent a whole year just trying to learn everything I could that he played. And I went over to his house after about a year, probably right about the time that we got the grant approved, and I said, okay, is this how you do it? And I sat down with the Gretsch, and I said, okay, and I played Tangerine, and I played Breakfast at Tiffany's, and a lot of the other stuff from his recordings, and I played about 3 songs, And then he screamed upstairs to John, who was sleeping. And this is the story that's in the biography. He screamed up, he said, "John, get down here, get down." And John was sleeping, because John's about 2 or 3 years younger than me. John came down, and he said, "Okay, play Tangerine." So I played Tangerine, and he goes, "See, that's how you do it. That's how you do it." He was yelling at John. So I think that's the story that I remember in the biography. And then I got the grant, and then I studied with him, and then, ultimately, he was, I wouldn't know Tony DeSare if it wasn't for Bucky. Bucky was Tony's guitar player. Bucky did the first couple of records. Bucky helped Tony a lot out, like 2005, 2006. I remember in 2007, I was producing a record for a woman who had just come off Broadway. And we were just looking for ideas, and we noticed that Bucky was performing with a vocalist named Tony DeSare at the Algonquin this particular weekend. So we said, "Hey, let's go see what this is." We didn't know anything about it, never heard who Tony DeSare was. And we went to the Algonquin, and of course, it was like beautiful. It was amazing. Tony, I was like, "Oh my God, this guy's unbelievable." His voice, his piano playing, and that's how I met Tony. We invited him to our release party for the project I was doing with this woman. Tony came, heard me, invited me to sit in, and I don't want to say I took Bucky's gig, because I don't think he really cared. I don't know how much, he was getting older. I don't know how much he really wanted to go on the road anymore, but you could say I took the gig.
What did you learn about Bucky that's helped you in your career? Besides teaching you to play, what did he teach you about being a musician and just being a person that helps so much?
As John would say, Bucky was a craftsman. He practiced his craft every day. He was a very simple guy. He was a guitar player. That's who he was. He loved to talk about the guitar. He loved to experiment with the guitar, and he sat on his porch every day. Unless he wasn't feeling good, Bucky Pizzarelli, get up in the morning, and he would have 3 or 4 guitars on his beautiful porch right by the brook, and he would practice. And so I do the same thing. I like to practice in the mornings. He also taught me that I love the composer by composer approach of, and I try to do that with my own students, is to rather than jump all over the place, to really focus on one composer before you move to the other one. Andre Previn, the great piano player, all of his recordings in the late 50s and the 60s were one by one. Sometimes he would just do Camelot or My Fair Lady, or sometimes, Lerner and Lowe. There's, a whole record of them. And it was always interesting. Some people shy away from that, but the great ones can make that very interesting, and it's rewarding to go. As far as a person, Bucky, we went out to dinner all the time. I'm very close friends with his daughters, always him and his wife. We went out to dinner all the time, and just, we had a great time. I would go over on Christmas. I would give him the bottle of wine that he liked, which was Chateau Yquem. That's what he liked, the dessert wine. He would give me like a cognac. I would give him the Yquem for Christmas dinner. Yeah, he lives on the same street as me. He lives a mile away. They just,
wow.
When he passed, they sold the house, but that's where John grew up. Yeah, it's the same street as me.
What is it that what was the first live jazz show that you ever saw that really blew your doors down, that made you think, this is something I'd like to do with my life?
Well, I was really, Bucky and John were always my inspiration. What was the first jazz show I saw? My older brother used to love, he was really into jazz. I would go see his band. We went to see Betty Carter a lot. He was in the 70s. He was a big Betty Carter fan. So I learned from him a lot. But when I heard Bucky and he played solo guitar on that 7-string, I knew that's what I wanted to do. And then John and I, after that day that I just told you about, I was in a band, like a top 40 band that was playing 6 nights a week, and John was just starting out. I asked the leader if I could share the gig with John, because I was getting tired I was teaching a lot in the day and then working 6 nights a week. I asked if I could split the gig with Bucky's kid, John Pizzarelli, and the leader absolutely forbid it. He said, no, if you want the gig, you got to stay all 6 nights. I said, just try him one night. He's funny, you're going to like it. And so John went and played one night with these guys, and then course, they loved him, and so we split the gig. We did 3 nights each for a while. But then John grabbed that band to be his first band. If you look at John's early videos, live in Montreal, like in the early 90s, where he went and he became the house band at the Rainbow and Stars in the Rainbow Room in Manhattan. And he took those guys with him. Kenny Levinsky was his first piano player, worked with him for years, did all the tours with Sinatra. That was all that band. We shared the gig. So really, I mean, I always liked Wes. You know, Wes Montgomery, I love Wes. Obviously never saw him. He was before my time. And I love a lot of the greats, but I'm from the Pizzarelli school, 100%. I mean, he's 85%, Bucky and John, 85% of my motivation to play the guitar.
So every day you wake up, you get to create and you get to be a musician. What's the greatest part of being a professional musician for you?
You know, there's a lot of great guitar players who I respect them, you know, in the New York area, and a lot of them, but a lot of them, you know, you have to play in little restaurants to make a few dollars and stuff like that. So clearly, touring the world with Tony DeSare has been, you know, I've been doing that since 2008, and it's just such a completely different experience than if I was just practicing my craft and, you know, only able to, you know, perform in small little restaurants or jazz clubs in the area. I mean, you know, we've been to Greece and London and Tokyo, and, you know, Thursday we're flying out to this beautiful venue in San Diego. I think it's called the Roddy. It's gorgeous, right on the water. You know, we're with symphonies all the time. We're with every symphony in the United States. So clearly, being his man, playing with that band, has done everything for me. You know, I'm his guy. That's what I'm most happy with.
Speaking of going to San Diego and getting back to it, that's the beauty of things right now. Even though we're in this ambiguous area, things are opening up. What does it feel like after such a long absence from live music to get back out and to do it?
Believe it or not, we did more work during the pandemic than a lot of people because Tony, what we called it a socially distant. Tony created a socially distant symphony show that we did during the pandemic a number of times. I mean, not a few, more than a few. And we were, but there was nobody in the audience. It was all like television, like the musicians were spread out on the stage. Instead of 58, maybe there was 25 or 22. And that way everybody was socially distant. Everybody wore a mask. They did it virtual shows, you know, virtual symphonic shows. We did it in Seattle. We did it in Salt Lake City. We did it in Jacksonville. And we did it a number of places. But that was, you know, so we were working. But, yeah, now to go back out to San Diego, whether it's really people or, you know, I'm trying to think now, you know, we were in Pittsburgh last month, and it was a beautiful, beautiful outdoor venue. It's so much better, but it's still not the same because, like, we're not going out and signing. You know, back in the day, Tony would, sit in front and meet people. You know, we're still not doing that. I don't know if we'll ever do that again, as far as sitting out and the CD signings and stuff. But we're interacting. You know, we're still interacting with other musicians and the conductors and having a good time and going out. I would say it's like 90% normal, back to normal. Not 100%, but 90. And in the pandemic, it was like 30. It was just like we were going places, but it was just virtual, socially distant symphonic shows, as we called it.
You know, everyone has a perception or an idea of who they think you are, your family, your friends, your fans, but ultimately you live your life. You have a perception of you. Who do you think you are?
I am Tony's guitar player, and I am Tony's guitar player that obviously comes from the Bucky Pizzarelli school of performing and how to play the guitar. And I don't know how much you know about Bucky, but I'm most gratified. Believe it or not, I remember in 2019 we were in Spain, and our first show was the San Javier Jazz Festival, and when they wrote about it all in Spanish, which I speak Spanish, so I had no trouble translating it to the guys, they immediately recognized that this guy, me saying, yeah, he did his solo a la the Pizzarelli's, you know, they immediately in Spain recognized that which was something that I don't even know, in the States I don't get it as much, But yeah, I was really impressed with that they recognize that that's the kind of guitar I play, because really that's what Tony likes. He loved having Bucky. Bucky plays time. Bucky plays very thick. If you listen to Tony's recordings, of Kiss, the early recordings with Bucky, there's no drums a lot of times. The straight time that he plays is very thick and very powerful, and from the Freddie Green school. And there's really not that many people that do that. I mean, obviously John does it, but there's not that many people that are doing that anymore. And that's why I got the gig, and so I'm proud of that, and I'm happy with it.
Beautiful. Edward, thank you for taking some time out for Neon Jazz to open up about the album and your life in music. I appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me on your show.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in New York, New Jersey, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Edward for his time, music, and story. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.